Today on Kite Bag Tour, we're celebrating the 1 year anniversary of Skyrider Limited with some friends. Welcome back to Skyrider Limited. I am Jesse, and today on Kite Bag Tour, we're diving into the 1 year mega episode. So recently, I put out a call to a whole bunch of friends and asked them to do a segment of a kite or kites that were important to them, special to them, something that got them into flying, or that was part of their flying journey, or that they really loved. I was pretty vague about it, to be honest. Um, and this video is what came of that. So, whole bunch of friends, some faces you'll probably recognize, some faces maybe you haven't seen before. We're going to dive right in and start checking those out. But first, I'm going to show you three kites that were kind of big on my journey, and we're going to take a look at those right now.
So, scenery change. I'm glad I got out to the beach and at least got to start talking to you there, but it is very, very cold in New England right now, and I was frankly underdressed. But that beach will be important in my portion of this story, so I wanted to at least be on it for part of this. So, the kites I decided to talk about, and obviously, as you've seen through the Kite Bag Tour videos so far that I've put out, there's quite a few kites in the house. And I could have talked about some more of the kites that really formed my foundation when I first learned to fly. I could have talked about some kites from my dad's sort of time before I started flying, which sort of indirectly formed my time in flying. But the kites I chose to talk about were the kites which I found my best individual success with. Um, so, in some of the previous videos, I talked about my time in competition with my dad, and that we stopped around 2003 or 4, which meant that pretty much all of our kites stopped development around 2003 or 4. So, when I decided to try competition again while I was in college, I basically had that selection of kites to work from initially. And I went to the East Coast Stunt Kite Championship at Wildwood, New Jersey. And I brought kites from that era, and I had a reasonably successful outing in competition there, and decided that I still enjoyed it, and I still had a drive to be a part of it and to work at it. And with that came a decision that I needed some new kites. So I did what any person shopping for kites would do. I asked everybody I knew and a whole bunch of people I didn't if I could fly their kites. I flew Lambhawk's Sea Devil. I think it was the Sea Devil at the time. That was his sort of current kite du jour. I flew an R-Sky Nirvana. I flew a Focus Jinx. I flew a bunch of kites. Bunch of kites. Stuff that was, popular at the time of 2010-ish. Yeah, it would have been May of 2010. So, the kite I had the quickest connection with, and the kite that I decided was my pathway forward, was the Saber series by Will Sturdy. Sturdy Designs Kites. Will was in high school when I met him in 2010. He had started making kites as a hobby and ended up selling a number of them to people. There was a decent group of us that were competing on his kites in sort of the 10 to 13 window. When Will went off to college, he initially had had some other people sewing sales for him, and then ultimately he got busy with college and basically drifted out of kites. Will is still sewing. He now makes bimini tops and canvas covers for boats. Will's high school's job, while he was also making kites and competing and going to school, was in a sail loft, and now he works in boats, which is pretty cool. So this is the Lite Saber. This is the first of the three that I have, and it was a really good ultralight. My kites were all complete customs. So Will generally, the diamonds were a color pop, and then the wingtips and belly were one color, and then the wings were on the lights. I think they were white over silver, and then the standards, if I remember correctly, were silver over charcoal. Usually black tips and belly, and then colored hits on the diamonds. Um, as you've seen with my kites, I sort of stuck with the colors from my sticks, for my Cavalier Stixes, and then went forward, and I've carried this color through a number of kites, including my stuff from the guys at Canvas. So Black Diamond 3PT lower spreaders. I think it's a P100 leading edge. 3 mil standoffs. A couple of interesting notes. It is a turbo bridle, but it is a very, very small turbo leg on here. And the sort of true to 10-year ago form, the bridle is fairly close to the center tee still. We haven't seen the distance change between the in-hauls and center tee at this point. Will had a very interesting method of tensioning the wingtip. So he used the HQ tip knocks that a lot of manufacturers use. But you can see here there's actually 2 holes. So the loop end of this tensioner, which is passed through the hole in the HQ, is here. The line goes through the HQ knock, through the loop, through a second hole in the sail, and then to the tensioner. This kite also does have a tip tensioned leech line that passes through the tail without attaching to the spine. It is a P1X spine, and one of the sort of interesting things, Will had a fairly novel method of doing weight on the spine. You can see that, but those are just hex nuts. They were very heavy, a lot of mass for the amount of space they used, but it wasn't the most precise weighting method. As I discovered a few years ago when I weighed the tail weight out of my standard, which I'll grab in a second here. The weight is about 35 grams on the standard. These kites are, I would say they're a little overweighted by modern standards, but they were really capable for their day and a lot of fun to fly. Don't fly them pretty much at all anymore, as they were my workhorses in competition, and they are pretty worn. You can see a few little bullet holes in the sail here, where the upper spreader made a cry for freedom at some point, and the nose is a little worn on this kite as well. I Every once in a while I talk to Will, and I keep hoping that one day he's going to tell me he's ready to start making kites again, and I can get a fresh set of sails. Will, if you stumble across this, I'll buy a fresh set of sails, buddy. I promise. Come back to us. We miss you. So small reinforcers on this kite. That tri-spy mylar, that lighter mylar we saw on some of the Cavaliers, was a really, really good ultralight and was a really good kite to compete on. Higher aspect ratio than a lot of the other stuff that I've flown. Light camber in the leading edge. The ultralight Saber, or light Saber as we knew it. Hang tight. I'm gonna go grab the next of the 3 kites, and we'll keep this rolling. Behind me, I have the standard Saber. This is a Saber 2. There were 3 versions of the Saber. I never flew a Saber 1 or 3. The Saber 1 had an Avia Sky Shark mix frame, and my understanding is it was a little lacking in the trick department compared to the 2. I first flew a 2 and then got to know the 2 really well. This is my custom 2. The 3 came out right as I was wrapping up the last time, and I actually didn't know Will was even working on it, despite talking to him pretty regularly. He kind of surprised all of us with that one, and it cleaned up a few of the kite's more aggressive tendencies, as I understand it. The kite had a fairly tight turn rate inside the wingtip. It could be very precise once you were used to it, but it also had a habit of displaying its more radical tendencies for the world to see. Some interesting stuff on this kite. Will really liked using a clear tape to protect the spine seam, rather than a mylar or something like that. The kites do use R Sky tees and stops. I'm still a really big fan of the hard R Sky yo-yo stop. I find it a really easy stop to hit because it does stick up. It's not awesome for the sail. They do, if you aren't careful about the way you put the kite away, they can wear out the sail pretty quickly. And they are obviously a little bit of a pain to install if you should need to replace one. Um, some of the other interesting construction points on this kite is right here in this lower panel. The mylar in the trailing edge is actually all the way up to here, and it's sandwiched between two layers of Icarus, with this seaming through. Will took a lot of his experience as as a boat sailmaker and applied it to the kites, and that was one of the things that came through. That, coupled with the lack of leech line in the Saber, gave it its sort of trademark rumble. I used to say it was like hearing a World War II warbird go by when they had, 8 or 10 mile an hour wind in them. They really kind of roared, and despite being a fairly small kite for it, they actually had a great presence for team. Will and Doug Charleville flew pairs together, and then Will's dad Jim and Doug flew team together with them as Crash and Burn and Crepitus et Etiendo. Same thing in Latin. Um, there were a bunch of us around that also had sabers and that formed up some other pairs. So Jim had a pairs partner, Jared. Oh God, Jared Hayworth, I think his last name was, and they flew pairs together. I, along with Doug Coates, flew pairs as Saber's Edge with the Sabers. Doug had basically the same custom layout on his standard and vent, which we'll see the vent in a minute, but his was in wine. Then he had a standard layout, light. And then there was Richard Mervine as well, and a couple other people, and so we would do a pickup team on and off through the 2011 and 12 season, and ended up going to nationals with that pickup team, and we came in second in experienced team, so that was pretty cool. This kite is also pretty well worn out. One of these standoffs is basically getting ready to come straight through the sail, unfortunately. So this one also does not get flown a ton. P2 spine, P200 spine and leading edge, Black Diamond Nitro, actual Black Diamond, not mistyped Black Diamond with the clear coat on them, spreaders on these. It was a great kite, stiff but responsive, and sort of one of the other interesting touches on this was Will, on his bridle for this kite, put a wear protector, a little piece of tubing here on the turbo leg, to help it not chew up the trailing edge as much during roll-ups. So that's the Saber 2. I'm going to go grab the heavy Saber, and we will take a look at the last kite of this bunch. Behind me is Saber number 3 of my set. So this is the heavy Saber, or vented Saber. In late 2010, Will and I got talking about the missing kite in the line, which was the vent. Will had played with it a little bit, but hadn't really done a ton of development on it. I kind of pushed him a little bit about it, and ultimately he ended up sending me the prototype, and I did a good bit of flying on it, out at the beach with a roll of duct tape, opening and closing vents that were in the kite until we settled at the configuration that's behind me. Will then took the prototype back and played with the vents a little bit more and developed a variable venting system. So these here are some Dacron patches that I've got in a little binder clip. These slide in to these segmented pockets. The mesh is actually doubled, and you can see them installed here in the tail vents, that allow us to blank off vents and adjust the amount of pressure and also some of the kite's behaviors. The Saber, before we got the heavy Saber done, one of its other defining traits was a good amount of pull. So this was a nice addition. The frame is exactly the same as the standard, as the sail, other than the venting, with one notable change. Will When Will settled on it, we had two sets of spreaders. For when the wind started to come up, Will also put a set of Nitro Strongs, the heavier version of the Sky Shark Nitro tube, in the Kite, and so I do have those as well. Something I ended up playing with a little bit later. So the last time I was flying this Kite was a set of 7 PT spreaders, a little bit different mass and flex rate in that lower spreader position, just to kind of change the Kite's behavior a little bit further. And I actually found the sevens to be a nice alternate configuration. They were a little deader than the Nitro, and when the wind really gets up, they can be a good alternative. They have a similar mass to the Nitros, so it doesn't really change the Kite's balance too much. It was a good vent. It definitely was not perfect. Both Will and I didn't really understand at the time. I think if we were to go back and play with it together again now, I could give Will some better feedback with an extra 10 years of understanding, and Will with an extra 10 years of understanding in his own right probably wouldn't need my help this time. Not to say that I provided that much help. I think in the end, I eliminated one set of vents that were out towards the wingtips. That was about all I really gave him feedback. Was that tip vent made the Kite very awkward in a fade. This Kite had the Sabers, I should say, in general, had an incredibly stable fade. You could just about fly it with one hand. I may or may not have ground staked my ultralight in a fade, and had a conversation while it sat there at Newport once. There's no photo, so I won't swear to it, but I swear I did it. So that's the Sabers. And now we're going to jump over and take a look at what all of my guests had to share with you.
Hello, my name is Devin Cobley Morrison. I am a part owner of Canvas Kite Designs, and I've been flying for, I don't even know how long, 26, 27 years now. And I was asked by Jesse at Skyrider Limited to do a brief installment for his kite bag tour, his 1 year. So I have 3 kites to show you today, um, all of which were very formative to my kind of upbringing, if you will. They're all from a designer called Bob Childs, and depending on where you look online, they're going to be under It's a Breeze kites or Mile High kites. Um, so the first kite I got is when I was about 4. I was at the Grand Haven Kite Festival, the Great Lakes Kite Festival, and it was actually a stacker because I was so small. Meet the Bob Childs Goblin, often called the Skynosaur. But this is the first one. A lot of Bob's kites at the time featured this kind of Prismatex, that kind of beautiful rainbow laminate right in there. And interestingly enough, Prismatex is usually used on Mylar. There's no Mylar in here. It basically feels like plastic. So it's just the laminate of itself. You can tell that there's actually no sewing here. It's just kind of glued to the sail. Um, and that's it. No spine. Very kind of old school kite. No T, just a little bit of cord there for you. And that's it. Little protruded frame. Again, nothing crazy, but I guess these days it is crazy because it's pretty uncommon. Um, but that is the little 3-foot kite that is supposed to be a stacker that was a little bit more than I bargained for when I was a kid. The next one is kind of his step up in the line, or I guess at the time that was kind of what it was considered, and that is the Hot Avalanche. So this guy is online considered to be a zippy 4-footer. And this is actually the kind of flew my first demo on in Grand Haven. There's still that Prismatex in there. And this time it does have the Mylar. So the laminate is now on the Mylar. So it's a bit more reinforced. It's used as its own panel. This time this Prismatex is sewn to the fabric. And that's it. Little protruded frame. Just a little guy here. There you go. Nice fittings, all bungees down here on the wingtips, on the spine. helps even out a little bit of gusts, and of course that low stretch quality from the Prismatex also very much kind of aids in response due to its low stretch and a kind of high response qualities. So that's this little guy. I had quite a few of these. These were kind of my beaters, where I started to learn a lot of tricks. These kites had a great backflip, but were a little slow when it comes to like flick flacks and things like that. So I needed something a little bit more, I guess, advanced as I grew and also as I grew on the lines. So I eventually moved up to kind of his grand kite, and it's called the Mosaic. And this is it. Yet again, more Prismatex. You can see some of that rainbow in there. This is an all Avia 220 frame. You have a real T on this one, 2 standoffs, pretty wide keel on this kite. This kite generated a lot of pull, kind of inward toe points. Felt a little bit dull to start gaining some momentum into it when the winds were a little low. But man, when this thing filled, did it pull you around? It was a lot, even as a kid. Some interesting qualities of this one are Bob's wing silencers. If you see that, there's actually a pocket in here that comes back from the Icarex down into this Prismatex pocket, and that was to keep the sound kind of at a minimum, hence the name wing silencers. And man, did they work! An otherwise quite loud kite really is not. It's about as smooth as glass, and it has this very dull buzz to it, which is something that I haven't gotten from any other kite. Another interesting part of this is that its mylar reinforcement on the keel is actually not sewn. You can see that. It's just stuck down there. It's obviously sewn into the trailing edge. But that's it. And of course, the sail is unique in the fact that it doesn't have a spine seam. So I guess one could say that this is asymmetric in and of its own right. But that's it. Just like all of Bob's other kites, we have bungees on the tips and on the T. Creates a nice smooth feeling along with that very generous amount of Prismatex, which really is not very common anymore. Great response in tracking. I still have not found a kite that feels quite like this one. A little slow on the trick side. I mean, she's a bit big for the sail, but really, really nice backflip. Quite capable, actually. I go out and fly this every now and again, and I'm shocked to see how easy backspins and Jacob's ladders and even comets are. So that really, I think, is a testament to Bob's work and I guess his lasting impression on the industry. But those were the 3 kites that I really laid all my basics on before moving over to Skyburner and HQ and stuff like that. So had I not had these, had I not had the help of, all those folks at Grand Haven, and had I not flown my first demo 2 days into my first event at the age of 4 on that hot Avalanche, I don't think I'd be here. So really formative kites. They mean a lot. All of these are brand new sales thanks to Blake Pelton and Gerald Trotman. And they're kind of my sentimental mainstays. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my 3 foundational kites. And thanks to Jesse for asking me to do this.
Hello everyone, my name's Frayz. You probably know me as Kite Crazed Full, and this is my section of Jesse's kite bag tour. I was very, very kindly asked by Jesse of Skyrider to do a small segment for a part of his upcoming video series on YouTube. So I've got some of my kites out behind me, just a selection, and he said to me to choose a couple of which I wanted to talk about. So let's have a go, shall we? Now, the first one was probably an obvious choice for those of you that know me. It's my Fulcrum. This is my full-size Carl Robertshaw built Fulcrum. I love this kite. It's opened a lot of doors for me with learning lots of new things, and mainly the people that it brought along the way. So let's get it out and have a look, and we'll have a chat. And here it is. This is my very own one of very, very few Cole Robertshaw built Fulcrums. This is a full-size Fulcrum standard. As you can see, she's a big girl. And this really is the quad kite that opened so many doors for me in terms of flight. Had previously started flying some rev style kites, which were okay, but never really excited me. And then saw this, and you can just tell they're such an interesting shape. They're a full 3D sail. They're unlike anything else to fly. They really do blur the lines between a quad kite and a dual line kite. You can learn a lot with it real quick. It's easy to pick up, but there's so much to master with it. I don't think you'll ever really get to mastering one of these things. Even Carl, I'm fortunate enough to have Carl as a friend now, and even he says that he's still learning stuff with it. So this particular one is incredibly special to me. As I said, it was built by Carl. It's a full custom. It's got some now discontinued colouring in it. It's what looked like the red panels are actually a colour called Rubin. They're no longer manufactured. She's sky blue and purple. And you'll notice that some of the white sections on this kite are actually done in silver. The other cool feature is that the centre panel that says Fulcrum is actually a white piece of Icarex that's been printed. So on the front, the Fulcrum is correct. On the rear, the Fulcrum is reversed. So that's pretty cool. Carl did that for me. He's also signed it and dated it. He built this back in 2021, and it's got a few little neat features on it. So somewhere's Carl's label down there. Classic CR logo that everybody knows. So yeah, this girl doesn't come out as often as I probably should do. Because I've tend to move to flying more Fulcrum 85s. The 85 is an 85% version scale size of this one. It's lighter, it's faster. It's generally a bit more tricky than the full size kite. But the full size frame is a wonderful bit of kit. It's got quite a bit of pull to it when you fly it. Makes a fantastic noise. And as I said, they just really are a brilliant piece of kit. I really, really enjoy flying this. And so much so I ended up developing a line of handles that I make for flying these. So as I said, it's opened a lot of doors for me in my flying and the people that I've met along the way. So really, really enjoy this kite. So thanks to Carl for building this for me. And let's have a look at something else, shall we? Okay, so the next kite I'm going to grab out of my bag is a dual liner. And again, probably pretty predictable for me. You've probably seen this before. This is my Canvas Kite Designs, designed by Devin Morrison, built by John McCracken, my Spur SE. Love this kite. It's about as much fun as you'll ever have in a dual line kite. So let's get it out and have a look. Here it is. This is my CKD Spur standard in again in custom colours. This is now in a discontinued teal. I'm actually fortunate enough to have a crux and an intention in matching teal colours, and they all carry a unique wingtip. My Spur has a flow yellow wingtip. My crux is orange and my intention is purple, but they're all teal with a contrasting colour. Now, this is arguably, or certainly was, the cheapest or most affordable kite in the CKD lineup, and in my opinion, probably one of the most fun. This thing is absolutely brilliant. If you're like me, and I'm a self-confessed dreadful dual line pilot in terms of tricks. Yeah, I can fly a dual line kite, but it's not pretty. I'm a huge kite enthusiast. I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of kites and some really, really cool stuff. But when it comes to flying them and making them look good, I'm really not the best man for the job. This kite is brilliant. It flatters you for tricks. It's got a really, really good amount of mass to it. So when you're trying to learn to spin it, it's got a nice amount of weight there. It's beautifully finished. It looks really cool. It's been signed by John and Dev. Love those guys. And it's got some really cool little details on it. It's got some little contrasting yellow bits of factor on the back here. Some other little contrasted features. As I say, the build quality is absolutely superb, and it's absolutely brilliant fun to fly. This is probably my most fun dual line kite. This, alongside probably something like a Benson Superfly. They're quite similar in their characteristics, I find, and they're quite accessible to me. I find they're the ones that I always want to go to and grab out the bag. If ever there's a kite, I'm quick, I've got to grab a dual liner, and it's only got to be one. It's either going to be this or the Superfly. It's quite a bit smaller than, say, an Intention. It's again smaller than a Crux, but just really, really good fun to fly. You can get a lot out of it, and I really, really enjoy it. And as I say, this one, I know I'm biased because I designed it, but I think it looks fab. So big props to John and Devin for making this for me. I'm really looking forward to catching up with those guys at Kite Party this year. I'm very lucky I'm going to be heading over to California to see those guys. And yeah, dead looking forward to that. So that's my Spur standard most fun dual line kite you'll ever fly. So lastly, I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in here because this is a sport kite channel for general frame sport kites, and I'm going to put something a bit different into the mix and chuck in this. Now this, if you don't know, I'm sure most people do, is a Flexifoil blade. It's a quad foil traction kite, and in my opinion, probably the greatest quad line traction kite ever made. This particular one is a blade 4. The first blade came out in around 99, second one in about 2004, then they've done a 3, a 4 and a 5. The 1s and 2s were quite sketchy in terms that they were quite spiky in their power delivery. The aerofoil shape is very, very lofty, so it generates a lot of lift even when it's at the zenith. Most power kites you can stick above your head and you can stand around and have a conversation, and they're quite friendly. They're going to sit there, they're not going to cause you any bother. With a blade, even when it's above your head, you get a nice gust of wind and off you'll be up in the air with it in no time. So the 4s, they come in a 4 meter, this one the 4.9, a 6.5 meter, and the big 8.5 meter. The 8.5 is an awesome piece of kit. Fantastic amount of power for low wind. Its downside is it's quite slow. It's like turning an oil tanker. The 6.5 is probably the sweet spot, but the one that everybody kind of knows about is this one, the 4.9 meter, the one that they aptly named the Widowmaker. It's fast, it's incredibly powerful, and it will give you a real kicking if you're not on your game, or you don't know what you're doing with one. A lot of people have been injured flying these because A, they've been a bit silly and probably flown it in some wind they shouldn't have done, and B, probably didn't really know what they were doing with it. Now, I used to fly these, I say used to compete in a buggy, doing buggy aerial freestyle in these, and I just think these things are absolutely fantastic. They're really, really good fun to fly. They're really exciting. As I say, they create loads of lift and they'll get you up in the air really, really fast. So for people that have not seen one, I will try and send over Jesse some pictures so that you can add in some photos of 4.9 with me on the buggy getting up in the air with one of these, because I think probably best traction kite ever made. After they've done the 4, they've done the 5, and the 5 sail profile was a bit softer. It was a bit smoother, a bit floatier, but never really had the grunt that one of these did. The 1s and 2s were a bit more spiteful. The 3s were a bit more refined, but the 4 really was the one. So the 4 meter and the 4.9 meter were a standard style sail. The 6.5 and the 8.5 have actually got a cross bridle activator to try and tuck those wings in to get them to turn a bit quicker, and that worked quite well. I do also have an adjustment for adjusting the angle of attack, for suiting different wind conditions. So yeah, my power kite choice, absolutely without question, Flexifoil Blade 4, 4.9 meter. If you get a chance to fly one, do it. You'll have a riot. So with that, I'll just say thanks very much to Jessie for inviting me to chat about some kites. I'm really looking forward to catching up with everyone at Kite Party in March. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Take care.
Hey guys, I'm Cassie Shook from Flying Smiles Kites in Corolla, North Carolina. That's my family kite shop. Last couple of years, I've been kind of taking over the management. But if you've heard of Flying Smiles, you've probably heard of the kites that my dad makes. I love these kites. And, you know, when Jessie was asking for kites that we love, of course, I'm going to show my dad's kite. But rather than telling you about how it's built, I'd rather tell you about, like, the man. I love that Dad didn't learn how to sew until he was 50 years old. He literally wanted to build some kites, so he learned how to use a sewing machine. All the time, people are telling me, oh, I can't do that. I'm 35, 40 years old, and I don't know how to sew. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and learn. Because if you have an idea, go with it. So that's Dad's kite. But then there's another example. My buddy Marc Conklin made this beauty. Marc literally woke up one day with this idea of a graphic in his head, and he made it happen. So I just want to tell people that when it comes to kite building, it does not have to be an unknown. Go to a workshop, learn how to use a sewing machine, get creative, because that to me is the most exciting part about kiting, is watching what people are making. So anyway, I'm going to go fly a kite, but I hope you guys all have an awesome day.
Hello, my name is John McCracken. I am the second half of Canvas Kite Designs along with Devin Cobley-Morrison. And I want to thank Jessie for inviting me to do a short bag tour of some of the kites that have been influential and important to me throughout my sport kite flying career. First is the Premier Addiction. This was the first kite that I owned and actually stole from a friend at the time. Oops. They didn't really fly it that much, and then I took control of it and flew the living daylights out of it. Somehow it is still in one piece, doesn't have any holes, still has a lot of life left in it. I actually have an Addiction Pro as well, but this one for sure is my favorite. It's also my favorite colorway for the Addiction. So the Addiction is very important. It started my career. All right, on to the next. It's one of the biggest kites I own, the Atelier Masque. It is a custom Aerostuff standard that I've had for about 10 years, I would say. Absolutely one of my favorite kites in the bag. It's an old school flyer, but does a lot of, if not all, I'd say a lot of the new school stuff. I have a great time flying it. You know, if I can fly a demo on it, I can, and I will, just because it's great. One, it makes a great noise, has some buzz to it, and it's just a blast to fly. All right, next for me, one of the most influential kites in my kite bag, my R-Sky Nirvana. And this Nirvana is a Debray replica build to his specs in the frame and also his reverse turbo bridle. This kite took me kind of from a mediocre flyer to a better mediocre flyer, if that makes sense. It is also the kite that I first did a demo on a few years ago at Kites Over Lake Michigan in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Learned a lot, flew the daylights out of it again, somehow also still in one piece. This kite also ran into a jetty on the beach in Georgia one time, but still in one piece, broken leading edge, but we're all good. Has a hole over here somewhere, but still has a lot of life left and will forever be one of my favorites. And now on to the most important kites in my bag. They are two of the same. The first kites that I saw all the way through from the design process all the way through production I was there for it, had a very small hand in it, and eventually made the bridle for the production versions. They are the Skyburner Widowmakers. As everything comes tumbling down, that's going to stay. The Widowmakers. So the Widowmakers to me are my first boutique kite, actually. I, at the time, was still in college, you know, learning the way from Tranopole and the people around, you know, the southeastern Michigan area, and saw this all the way through, like I said, from design to production. My standard here is sale number 2 in the product line, and my ultralight is the ultralight number 1 and one of 2, I believe, Mylar ultralights. I think there's just one other, but these are my favorite kites that I have flown forever. The standard has literally been through everything: snow, heat, sand, water. Has some holes in the keel from me not knowing how to put a tube in a kite. It's what happens when you're young and dumb. So these are the 2 favorite kites of mine that I have in the bag, and my ultralight right here is also one that I consider the prettiest in my bag. And I was very happy that Mike and Pam with Heads Up Kites were able to go from flat felt seams in the standard over to a taping seam tape situation for me in the ultralight, and I absolutely love them. So these are the 5 that have been great and influential to me and are important. And enjoy the rest of the show. And Jesse, thank you.
Hey, this is Torrey Lindemann. I'm here today to give you a kite bag tour. So I'm a friend of Jesse Capston. He had challenged myself and some of others in the kiting community to open up our kite bags and share with you guys today something that's special to us. So what I thought would make sense was to give you a glimpse of a handful of kites that really got me started. Everything from my very first kite to one that really revolutionized the kiting world, but also my own flying style, and really helped get me into the sport of kite flying and just really loving flying kites, trick kites, dual line kites, all that fun stuff. So let's get started. So the first one that we've got here is the Sky Jammer. All right, so the Sky Jammer, this is my first one. I think I got it for like 25 bucks from a kite shop up in Boston. And it was made by Spectra Star Kites. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about this is that it doesn't have any standoffs, okay? Also, these the rods that make this thing up, that are used to make this kite, are these are fiberglass, solid fiberglass rods here, all right? So definitely a fun kite. You had to use a stick to prop it up because it wouldn't, there were no standoffs to hold it up. But man, once if you had a lot of wind, you get this thing up in the air, and it is gonna scream across the sky. The sail made out of ripstop nylon. Actually, yeah, it is ripstop nylon. It would make the loudest buzzing noise you could ever hear, but it was a ton of fun. Basically, what I would do with this thing is fly it around and dive bomb at the ground and turn and get as close to the ground as I could and spin it and turn back up before hitting the ground. And that was the whole plan, was try not to crash, okay? And if you did crash with this thing, basically it was bulletproof. The spars would just pop right out. You can also notice that it's just using these this tubing material to hold everything together. That was, all the different pieces of it, tubing material. We've got some bungee cords, a couple of plastic pieces towards the end, but very simple design. Delta wing, there you go. Now, as I got a little bit better, I did upgrade. I eventually I got this top of the line kite that I want to mention real quick. I don't have the sale for that anymore, unfortunately, but I do have some of the framing of it. And what I wanted to point out is that that one used also fiberglass, but it was tubular in shape here. So still very much indestructible. This thing, you know, could take a beating. Used the similar tubing material, top of the line. You know, this particular kite wasn't their biggest model, but the company top of the line was really well known for some of the early kites in the 1980s and early 90s dual line sport kites. So we've got that. Now we're going to move on to the Spectra Sport kite that we've got. Right, so this is the Spectra Sport Edge. Now, this is a 3/4 size edge. So 3/4 size meaning they made a full size kite of this, which is a bit taller. So this is actually smaller than their standard model. But being smaller, you know, at the time I was, you know, high school or middle school student, you know, pretty young. I was probably about, I want to say 14 years old, 15 years old maybe. So the big ones pulled a lot. It was nice to have the 3/4 size because I could still maneuver it. It was nice and fast. Also had a nice buzzy noise to it. We also see is a couple of features I want to point out is they had these little wingtip things. There's a little standoff in the back that holds that out. You'll notice that the joints here, the fittings, are still tubes at this point, all right? Still using similar technology, but we've upgraded the frame. So the frame, and I've got an extra frame piece right here. This is a pultruded graphite rod, okay? So carbon fiber right here. And that made it a bit lighter, okay? Made it lighter and you know, for the amount of stiffness that it had. So that was a nice big feature. But even still with this kite, you still needed a good, you know, 6 miles an hour of wind to get this thing off the ground. You know, it was not a light wind kite by any means. It did track fairly well. It had a little bit of overspin. It's been a while since I've flown this one, but you can see it definitely got a lot of flight time over the years. So also some things to point out. It's like the other one, is a 3-point bridle that, you know, gives it, you know, it had some adjustability to it. So you could adjust how much pitch you have or how much lift. So if you had more wind, you could adjust it back. There's actually some marks here on the bridle. So you could tip the nose back in higher wind to give you a little bit more, slow it down and give it more stability. In lower wind, you could tip it forward to give you more lift. That tended to make it spin out a little bit on the turns, harder to make those nice, crisp, sharp turns. So that's these were what I would call like the early years kites for me. But then, and this is my favorite one here of the day, we're going to show you. We've got the Prism Eclipse, okay? So now this is what made it for me right here. This Prism Eclipse is just night and day different. Now, what's crazy is that these kites were actually all around a very similar time period. So the Spectra Sport Edge that you see there, you know, I did see some early competitions, and I think the competitors were flying the Spectra Sport Reactor, Reactor Pro. I don't know the exact name of it, but basically the same style kite as that Spectra Edge that you're seeing there. But here, let me point out some key features here. So first of all, in the center, you have a mylar laminate. Okay, so this is a low stretch. You might have noticed that on the other one, the center was getting a bit more stretched out. This is low stretch, but also the ripstop polyester fabric as opposed to the ripstop nylon Also, keeps the stretching down, tends to last a bit better, especially out in the sunlight and stuff. It's going to get less faded. And let's see some other things. So some of the frame parts here, like the spreader here, is still that graphite pultruded, carbon fiber rods, but the rest of the rods here, the rest of the frame is wrapped graphite. So instead of pultruded, just means it's the fibers are all straight, going, linearly through the rod like this. Whereas the wrapped graphite, it's spiral bound, right, and goes around in a spiral orientation, and that allows them to get the sidewalls, even thinner, but create still have the same stiffness for dramatically less weight. So this has the wrapped graphite rods in all the leading edges, as well as the spreaders, the lower spreaders, and let's see, the spine here is still pultruded, right? But you'll notice some other things that are different about this kite too. The fittings are no longer these, just pieces of, tube. The fittings here are actually, molded specifically for kites, and you'll see that these will continue to progress, as time goes on. But again, this kite, I don't know the exact date, but it was, this is mid 1990s that the Prism Eclipse was released. So Prism, their first headline kite that they came out with that was groundbreaking was the Radian. Okay, the Radian was super wide, what they call a high aspect ratio, very wide. This, dialed things back a little bit. And so it made it much more of a all-around kite and amazing, competition kite. And just, it simply was able to do things that older kites could not do. And it's not so much about the age, but just, again, the design, the technology, just the features of, so this has a deeper sail, right? The rods are a bit different. It's still a 3-point bridle, right? Later on, Prism is going to, and other kite manufacturers will come out with active bridles that move around a little bit differently. But yeah, so this has still that 3-point bridle. We also do have, similar to the Edge had those little wingtip things there. We have these battens right here, which are going to give you an extra wingtip, or, extend the sail a little bit more. That's going to add to some of the stability. But some other features too. Let's check out the backside. We've got some reinforcement here. And the some reinforcement along the back, and we've got some bungees. All of them had bungees, no big deal about that. But the other thing, I don't see it quite in here, but I'm quite certain that there's what they call a leech line. It's a line that's a string that's sewn into the trailing edge. I think this one has it. So the reason I think that is this kite, when you fly it, it has no buzz. It's very quiet when it flies. So the buzz is great in the other kite. So you notice that the sail depth, right? The Spectra sport kite there is much shallower, but it gets some of the stability from the buzz of the sail that actually creates drag as it flies through the air. So no buzz is great because it's quieter, not as loud, but it gets its stability instead with a bit deeper sail. And anyway, so we could probably talk about that for hours. and I'm sure there's other folks that would chime in on sail design and all that. So some other comments that I do want to make real quick. The bridle point here. So the other kite I was showing you, you adjusted the bridle right here, and many modern kites do that as well, right? So that's not a new thing. And it hasn't completely gone away. But one of the features that they added here was to try to simplify that. So they have a knot system. I think they call this the attitude adjuster. So you could, there's these little holes right here, all right? And you would pull the bridle in through that hole, and there's a series of different knots. So you could adjust it to a different knot depending, again, on if you wanted to tip the nose of the kite forward or back and give it a different attitude. So some other things that I can't really point out here, in my living room easily, but this Prism Eclipse, man, it will go toe to toe with most of the modern kites out there. All right, as far as tricks that are possible with this thing, the edge, you might have been able to do an axle. You can definitely do stalls. Some basic tricks like that. Whereas with the Prism Eclipse, this thing can do fades, lazy Susans. You can put it right on its back, spin it around. 540 belly spin. I got Smokey, my cat there, hanging out with us. But anyway, so fantastic accessibility to modern tricks. And again, you had this in the mid-90s when most people didn't know what that was. But why is this important to me? So again, this was and actually, I should also point out, if we look at the things on here, so this is a Prism Eclipse Super Ultralight. Okay, so Super Ultralight. Again, they made standard models of this. They made vented models of this. Okay, so that helps you to get all wind ranges. I could fly this in 2 miles an hour of wind, 1 mile an hour wind. In fact, when I first got this kite, one of the first things I did with it was go into a soccer field and fly 360s. So that means there was basically zero wind, and I'm just running around. Now, I still had to run quite a bit, pretty hard, but it had that was a possibility. The other kites, you couldn't run fast enough to keep those things up in the air. So that's it in a nutshell. What we are going to do, we are going to share some other tidbits on the actual flight of this kite, what it looks like. I was able to take it out last night, get some footage for you, and so enjoy. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Torrey Lindeman. You can follow me on TikTok and the other socials. Kite Flow is kind of my name tag there. But again, thank you to Jesse for opening up the forum for us to share what's important to us. Enjoy, go fly a kite, and have fun. Bye.
Sending a message to the old and young, confused about where I come from. Relax your mind, let your conscience be free.
Now people always want to know my strategy plan.
Like laugh on the phonograph, none of the cuts. I'm the man with the box that can rock the crowd. On the humble style and I be wildin' on wax. Man, my sound's laid down by the underground. I'm not a beginner, amateur or local. Check it, it's a new thing. Check out this break. Backstage pass to a funky show.
When I clap my hands and I stomp my feet.
Dance with the speaker till you hear it blow. Then plug in a headphone, cause here it goes. So check it, 1, 2. Put your record on wag.
Boom, the bip, the boom, bip, boom. Listening to hip hop, listening to hip hop. Boom, the bip, the boom, bip, boom. Listening to hip hop, listening to hip hop, listening to hip hop, listening.
Well, that will do it for this Mega Kite Bag Tour episode. Thank you so much to all my guests for helping out on this. Thank you to all of you. When I started Skyrider Limited a year ago as a YouTube channel and whatnot, I don't think I ever would have guessed that 1 year in, 500 of you would have subscribed and followed along, and that I would be turning out a video a week or more of content like this, and all the shorts and everything, and going all the places that this has taken me. Kiting's always taken me some pretty incredible places, but this has really been a lot of fun to do. As always, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, sharing. Again, thank you to my guests that made this video possible, and we will see you out there, Skyrider.